caution you with that. And we are going to take a little bit of time now for some Torah study. Second day, if you recall, I don't really like to do a Devar Torah. You've heard enough words from me between the Divrei Torah. If you'll pass that half, that would be amazing. Thank you, Myra. Yasher Koach. And you'll be hearing more, but it's also part of our world to you know how worried I am. Okay. And I'm gonna get actually have a couple that I want to make sure I have. To do is to pick three texts that really don't necessarily have much to do with each other on the surface, or at least you wouldn't necessarily think of that. So the first one that I'd like us to look at is from Amir Gilboa. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with his poetry. He was actually born Beryl Friedman in a small town in Ukraine in the section of Volhynia. And that section is close to my heart because that's where my family on my father's side was from. In fact, there's a history of the Jews of Volhynia, and when it talks about the Holocaust, they talk about my uncle who was in the partisans there and things like that. So I know the area well, but back to Gilboa. He was taught in his youth Hebrew, which was actually sort of unusual in addition to classical texts, because most of the time it was really Yiddish. In his teen years, he was spent time in a Hakshara encampment, which is sort of a preparatory village that readied Jewish youth for Aliyah to Israel. And in late 1937, he left his family behind, and he joined a group of 40 youth that made a successful attempt at illegal immigration to Palestine. If you recall, there was a white paper, actually two of them, that the British did that really stopped or severely limited Jewish immigration. So he got in illegally. And for several years, he was just a kid. He was working a variety of odd jobs in orchards, in quarries, road building projects, whatever he could do. And he was on several kibbutzim. He was in British Army camps, and then he joined the 8th Army in 1942. He took part in the North Africa campaign and the siege of Malta. Later, he joined the Jewish Brigade that was part of the British Army of World War II and fought in Italy and demobilized in 1946, the Jewish Brigade. He joined and was involved with the 48-49 War of Independence, the Israeli War of Independence. He later joined, he was on Masada Publishing. Some of you may recognize that. He was there involved with that for some 20 years in Tel Aviv. And he encouraged younger poets, but he was awarded many, many prizes for poetry and literature in his life. He had a lot of agony because of the deaths of his parents, brothers, and sisters who were all victims of the Shoah. When he left them behind, he never dreamed that he would not see them again. And especially in his early collections, which already made him famous. This poem that we're reading is from a 68 volume called I Wanted to Write the Lips of Sleepers. So let's read the poem and we'll react to it. And I'm going to try to read it in Hebrew, and then we'll read it in English. Ani mitpalel mitoch halev sidur karua shulayim v'chol ha-milim ha-chaserot Ani ro'an mit ofafot. Kavar zman. Rav. Kavar zman rav. Mit ofafot. Umivakshot manoach. Lachaf regel. Eich avilahen mazor. Velev sidori achul shulayim. Zalva arom. I pray within my heart a sidur, one with torn edges and all its missing words. I see I have long since flown away, and seeking a resting place. How shall I bring a bandage for them when my heart's sidur with eaten edges still goes naked? A lot to take in a small amount of space. Anybody want to has a comment on the poem, its theme, its structure, its images? Anything hits you as being interesting, exciting, something you want to know more about, you have a question of? We don't have to have answers here. We're a Jewish community. We just like to talk. Yes, Josh.
So to me, it seems like it's talking about a praying, he's going within himself, but not all of him is still there. He's been torn, presumably by grief.
Mm-hmm.
So not everything that he thinks should be there is there. And he's asking, how can he bring that stuff back when the wound is still so raw? He doesn't even have a cover for what's left. That's what I get.
Beautiful. I love that. Right. The words have flown away long ago. They are not touching him. Right? Because he needs his own soul, his own heart to be bandaged. And that it's hard for him to be helpful to the word, to the page, right? And connect. Is that, is that kind of what you're getting at? Okay, yeah. Okay, I want to make sure I did not misrepresent you. So thank you. Anybody else have a thought about this poem or anything in it? Yes.
We're kind of going on with what you're saying. You can really visualize it so well. He is just so in the heart. Read this, I feel it. He's just so blown apart. And it's so sad. So it's so holy moly. It's so sad. But then, of course, you see the broken heart. He needs to hear himself. He's still so naked and blown apart.
Yes.
I can't even see him to the left.
Yeah.
I see him being so naked and so blown apart, trying.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful, Myra. Beautiful. Vulnerable and torn and hurt by life, right? And yet, he is talking about Siduri, my Sidur, right? So he's still connected to the Sidur, and it's almost as if he has a sense that a Sidur is the starting point for healing. By taking the time to pray, to reflect, to meditate, might be the way for him. Fran, I think I saw a thought brewing.
Well, Joel, if you hear me, because I know you're live streaming.
Joel Gordon, Fran is now talking to you, but I hope you don't mind that the rest of us might eavesdrop.
Okay. So I see it, I was going off what all of you were saying, that sometimes when you are the most hurt, or in the most pain, or the most damaged, when you reach out, when you connect to Judaism, when you connect something in there, things start to make sense and you see things in a different way. While it's so sad there, but it's still, there's still structure with which to connect, and you understand things in a different way.
Yeah. Thank you, Fran. And that sort of touches on how his path in some ways is counterintuitive to American culture, which tells us we should never really express pain. We should always be happy. and put on a happy face, right? Ever since Bye Bye Birdie, right? It wouldn't be me if I didn't bring in a musical. Okay. Right? He is starting at a place of acknowledging, perhaps even publicly, his pain within a Jewish context, which is something we don't always do. How was your year? We come to Shul and Rosh Hashanah. How was your year? It was fine. It was good, right? As if you went through 12 months of nothing but goodness and sweetness and sunshine and light. Like, really? And what planet were you on during that year? Because that is not the human beings that I know. Yes, you may have had light and some sunshine and some good things, but my guess is that being human, we probably all went through some things that caused us some nervousness, caused us some sadness, caused us some frustration. So thank you, Fran, for reminding us that rather than doing the American thing and hide away our pain, that sometimes coming to Shul, coming to the prayer book, coming to each other, coming and talking and sharing, which we sort of hinted at in one of my remarks. I don't know if it was Erev or daytime, but thank you. Yes, Troy.
So when I read the line, one with torn edges, knowledge missing words, I see have long since flown away into the essence. It kind of makes me think like his life experience has sort of like edited his word. He's taken words out, and he's still praying from it, even though it has missing words. So like his life experience has kind of edited his siddur for him, so he maybe can't believe certain things. But he still is praying from it, and he's still wrestling with tradition, and he's still wrestling with, metaphorically speaking, what he used to pray when all the words were there, because he's still, like, words have flown away, and they're seeking a resting place, or kind of he's still on that search for meaning and revising what he thought he knew about God, about life, about the world.
Beautiful, Troy. That was amazing. So, yeah. So, right, he is still aware of how much damage has been done to his heart from life circumstances. He still wants to get back his vitality, right? One more comment on this, because I want to move to the others. Josh, I see something brewing. Are you thinking? If you save it, that would be great. Yeah. So just to say that this collection from 68, he actually, a lot of the poems contemplate things that are beyond our control, life swift passing, the impersonal nature of time sometimes, the social our isolation that we sometimes feel. And he seems to sometimes get caught between knowing and fear, between insight and helplessness, conflicts and ambivalences. He wavers back and forth between affirmation and negation in a lot of these poems. And he's groping. You almost get a sense that in all of this, that he's trying to grope for some coherence and grounding on which to stand up again in his poetry. A very, very moving poet. And his poetry actually was the start of a brand new wave of poetry in Israel. And you can see from it that some of the incoherence that he feels is mirrored in the structure. There's no periods. And so that is hard to do. And the line readings aren't really connected to the linear way we speak Hebrew. So it's Sidur Karua, right? He's praying from a Sidur Karua Shulayim. But yet Sidur's on one line and Karua Shulayim's on another. Eich Avi is one phrase, but Eich is at the end of one line, and Avi, how and I will bring are on two separate lines, etc. So the whole structure sort of suggests his state of not being feeling fully whole. I want to move to the next text. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who was the founder of Chabad, told his grandson, the third Chabad Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, something about Reb Zushya. Reb Zushya was also in that third generation of Hasidic masters, following the generation of the Besh to the Baal Shem Tov and the generation of those disciples. And Rabbi Zushya was known for his deep emotional approaches to prayer and piety. In any event, Reb Shneur told his grandson, Reb Zushya, that I cannot reach the level of return that our Rebbe had described. He'd rather divide Teshuvah into 5 parts. So he actually picked 5 biblical verses or parts of verses, each of which is to represent a different aspect of Teshuvah that Reb Zushya identified, each beginning with one letter of the word Teshuvah. Hopefully you can see that I bolded the 5 verses in Hebrew, the first letters, they spelled Teshuvah going down. And each one is to serve as a portal to that quality of return. So I'm going to read this and want you to think about, as I read it, his choices of verses or verse parts and what each verse is trying to say, what each verse might add to that another verse choice doesn't, as far as his way of trying to find an opening for him to do what Amir Gilboa wants to do, and that is to regain their way to do teshuvah, to find a return to themselves. So, Tamim Tiya im Adonai Elohecha, Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki mimini balamot, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, b'chol derachecha da'ehu, hatznei alecha im Elohecha. You shall be wholly present with your God Adonai. I'm ever mindful of Hashem. At my side, I am unshakable. Love your fellow being as yourself. Know the source on all your paths. Walk modestly with your God. Does anybody want to respond to any one verse or anything here, or the sort of poem of 5-verse poem as a whole? What does it say to you? What does it say about Teshuvah? Anything at all that you want to share? Yes, Josh.
To me, it's saying that you need to come as you are,
Mm-hmm.
and that coming as you are is what you need to do. Like, to relate it to the first poem, he's saying, how shall I bring a bandage for them when my heart sidor, but edges still go naked? And to me, this one is saying, naked is how you came into the world. Like, why are you worried about naked when you can be wholly present with God?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if your sidor is missing words.
Mm-hmm.
Do you love your fellow being as yourself? And do you know God is with you?
Mm-hmm.
And the words can help, but the words aren't the path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God is the path. And you can be naked and walk the path, and that's fine.
I love that. So you can be naked, but that's the beginning of starting a journey for yourself. And it's not necessarily the words here or the words on a page in a Matzor or in the Torah per se. It is our connection to God.
And it's not even the beginning of the journey. It is the journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Like our beginning is dust, our end is dust. You know, we come into the world naked, we go out of it naked,
Mm-hmm.
and in the middle, like, God knows what we are naked.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not, covering yourself up is not important.
I love all of that, but I love especially that in order to begin, we can be vulnerable, naked, bare, feeling how Amir Gilboa might have been feeling, but it is part of it is bringing all of you into it, as you should say, wholly present, including your vulnerability and your hurts and your wounds, and realizing how precious we are because of them. And that's what makes us in our journey and our relationship with God and our relationship with each other and what we have to offer all that much more special and precious, because we are bringing all of us, including the hurts as well as the good stuff with us. So I appreciate that. Is there anyone else? Yes, Mark.
Sorry,
You want to insert something quickly, and we're going to ask other people to reflect.
I'm going to say that the missing words are missing. They're part of your own completeness. The stuff that doesn't exist is also part of you.
Interesting.
And now
Mark?
Joel says, be humble in everything you do.
I love that. Yes, be humble in everything you do. And I think Fran had a couple of weeks in her Midot class that she focused on humility, if I remember, on that Midah. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Brenda.
Love your fellow being as yourself. You have to learn to love yourself and accept yourself before you can accept others. And that if we did more of this, more love shown, then we'll be able to accept all others. And that's really important in our lives to do.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love that you, that we have to love, in order to really love others, we have to really love ourselves. So we have to work on that, not at the expense on working at loving with others, but concurrently we'll have to do both. But I also love that you pointed that verse, because what a lot of modern scholars have found in ancient texts is that what often is the most important is what's in the middle, what's at the core. So the middle of this particular sort of piyut of 5 verses is love your fellow as yourself. Obviously from the Torah, from the middle of the Torah, right? It's from Leviticus 19:18, very close to the middle verse and the middle words of the Torah. And here it's the middle of the poem. And at the heart of everything, then in part, is loving yourself and love it, and so that you can love others, and love others so you can love yourself. And doing that, you have to bring all of yourself to it, because it's hard to just love your right hand, but not your left. It's hard to love a part of yourself without loving another. That's not really fully loving yourself. It's not being wholly present and full of love if you love one toe, but not another. So, etc. Esther.
The rabbis break up the mitzvahs in many different ways, but one of the ways is one who purposely know versus one who purposely don't know. And there are relatively few of the latter. There's like the red heifer, and you don't get that one. But for most of them, the logic is either obvious or given. Don't commit murder. Don't steal. If you're going to build a house with a flat roof, you have to build a fence so that nobody falls off and kills themselves. And all of these mitzvot are not about the relationship between humans and God. They're about the relationship between humans and other humans. And I feel like the relationship between us and God, we have young people here. The relationship between us and other humans, God doesn't take care of that. We have to do that.
I love that, Esther. So that a lot of the mitzvot that we read are seemingly very obvious. There's something almost as if this is what we all can agree on. Not that everybody always does that, because there are people who murder other people. You can just turn on the news any day. So I'm not trying to be naive, but most people in the world, if you ask them, what can we agree on to have a good society? Well, we've got to cut out murder. We've got to cut out thievery, etc. And we can all agree that that's not a good thing to just let that go. But where it gets a little bit murky and muddy is in the when you get into relationships, and it's hard to really regulate those. And so I love that you did that, and that I love that you also talked about how on the high holy days, especially, is of course we can do it any day, but we don't take time every day. And that some part of our work on the high holy days is to reconnect with God and godliness and some of the some of that relationship that we don't often attend to. Even when we come to shul, sometimes we're so focused on what we want to get out of that Shabbat service that we're not really focused on our relationship to Hashem. So I appreciated all of that. Thank you so much. And Rabbi, I want to get to you for your wisdom.
So I saw the first poem as Gilboa is saying, there's just no way I can do for others when I'm broken myself. And the second piece is saying, like, the no, actually, use what you have, and that is actually not your weakness, but is your strength. You can love more fully, more intentionally, more authentically by using your brokenness, and you can have this kind of this internal tikkun by using that to help others, and counterintuitively doing the broken.
I love that we can use our broken pieces to actually love more deeply and fully and authentically. So I love that. And maybe that's part of why at least the Midrash states that the first set of tablets, remember that Moses broke at the golden calf episode. There's the Midrash says that each of those broken pieces and shards were saved, and they were actually put into the ark, into the Mishkan that they carried, along with the new set of tablets that they got. And part of the reason for that is a reminder of our own brokenness, and not only as individuals, but as a community, and that we need to bring all of that with us and to live in it, to realize that we still can get the most out of ourselves when we realize that we're living vulnerably and openly. And so thank you, Rabbi. I appreciated that. And Phil, I saw your hand up.
I'm not sure if this really was right, and I've been pondering this.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that the love of your fellow being as yourself, somehow the golden rule is coming into my head.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if that really applies or not, but it keeps going in my head.
Yeah, it's almost the start of it, right? Do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. Right. And it's in various, I actually did a survey once, and there is very close in words, almost every culture I found has something like the golden rule in it. I probably found 20 different statements from 20 different from 20 different religions that all have something similar. So there's something powerful, and something that we have to recognize is that we don't always, you wouldn't have a golden rule like that if you didn't need it. I don't think people make up rules that don't fit a single situation or reality. So there is a reality there that we don't always treat people, even on the easy stuff, as Esther was saying. Sometimes the easy stuff that some of the mitzvot sort of spell out, we actually don't do. So we need a starting place. And then there's the deeper part of relationships that we hope to get into, both with God and with each other. Troy, and then we're going to move on to the third poem.
Between the last line of the first poem and the first line of the second,
Mm-hmm.
I see a bridge, and it reminds me a lot of the tradition that a lot of Jews have of visiting the mikvah before Yom Kippur. And traditionally when you enter a mikvah, you're completely naked. You don't even have jewelry, makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that you're standing before these living waters are a symbol of God, and you were before Yom Kippur, the waters, and going to be completely enveloped, held by water, symbolically by God, and you shall be wholly present with your God. I see this image of like leaving the water, and there's absolutely nothing. All that you've been through in your life, there's absolutely nothing in that moment that's not being developed and embraced by water, by God.
Yeah. I love that idea that for those who have the minhag of going to the mikveh before the high holy days or before Yom Kippur specifically, feel very embraced, and that whenever the mikveh is used, you're bringing your whole self to it. right? Including every event that you had, but all your vulnerability, right? That Josh was talking about, go with you. And you really can feel it very intensely in the mikveh. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. I want to go to the third piece, which is by David White. It's a poem on the other side of the handout. He's an Anglo-Irish poet. I love his poetry. He's very spiritual, and he's actually really good friends with John Donahue, and I've used and adapted some of his poetry and readings sometimes. And he actually talks about poetry as being trying to express the conversational nature of reality. And he's very big on that. He worked as a naturalist. He lived in the Galapagos Islands, and he actually, while he was there, he suffered a near drowning on the southern shore of Hood Island, if any of you have ever been there. In any event, he talks about poetry as language against which we have no defenses. So in any event, we're going to take the challenge of this poem, but the poem, Start Close In, is maybe something, how to start our tshuva, how to start our process, how to start a conversation, how to start when we're vulnerable, how to start when our siddur is frayed, how to start when the words are there, but they seem to us as if they've flown away. How can we reconnect with those words? How can we reconnect with Hashem and with each other? So I'm going to read this poem, and then we can react to it. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Whew, lot there with all of these three texts. Anybody want to react to anything in the Myra Bavakasha? Mm-hmm.
It's time to look at your own soul.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm-hmm.
own self, your own soul, your own body,
Uh-huh.
your movements, the whole kit and caboodle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Be humble
Mm-hmm.
and search yourself.
I love that. A lot of times when we want to, when we have something to say, I have something to say, right? Sometimes when we do that, we jump in, but we haven't actually started with ourselves. We're reacting to something other, right? And not starting from ourselves. And you have to be in touch with yourself, right? And who you are and where you are in the moment and how you are in the moment, so that you can proceed with your best, sweetest self, right? It takes, yes. Yeah, it takes a lot of humility to be in relationship with other people. It takes a lot of humility to start your own journey of healing and growth. And you can't really bypass that, really. There's, as I said before somewhere, there's really no shortcuts to this a lot. And starting by being real with who you are might mean that you can only take a small step, but you got to take the step that's authentic to you. So I really appreciate that leading with humility and getting in touch with that and maybe taking a step backward, or at least not moving until you're in touch with your humility and that. So thank you, Myra. Yes, Josh.
So building on that and going back to what you were saying earlier about, the American psyche being against vulnerability, it could also be looked at as, don't be afraid to be humble. Don't be afraid to admit that you're not perfect to yourself or to others. Don't be afraid that you're not everything everyone expects you to be, because you don't need to be all of that. It's okay to be yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways that's true humility isn't, downplaying your accomplishments. It's coming to terms with the fact that it's okay to be what other people might call broken.
Absolutely. Yes. To be part of that broken shard, but know that it actually is Torah, right? I love that. Yes, Vipka.
To me, it's like something about change.
Mm-hmm.
When we want to make changes, we often make excuses by saying, oh, it's too hard, or it's too, like I have to go there in order to make the change. But he's saying, take one little step, just look at your ground and just do that first thing. But he also acknowledges that even that little first step is really hard. So I love that, like, don't look ahead and make excuses to not go to the second and third step, but also acknowledge that the first step, even that first little step, is hard and sometimes impossible.
I love that. So sometimes when we know we need to make changes, sometimes life presents us with changes with our bodies or with our friends, or somebody moves away, or someone passes away, or somebody needs to give up driving, or whatever it is in the changes that happen to us. We need to, number one, realize that we need to make a change, and we need to maybe start small, right? And not and sometimes we feel we always have to do everything, and if we don't do everything, we've done nothing. It was almost like that's what one of the things in the conservative movement, right, that attracted me to study was I felt when I was in yeshiva and when I was living more of an Orthodox life, I don't know that it was said, but I always felt like I had to know everything before I knew anything. And that I didn't really have a handle on Talmud or Tanakh or davening or anything until I knew everything. And I always felt inadequate because I didn't do everything or know everything. And at the seminary, it was sort of like, what you need is a method for yourself that you can approach things so you can continue to grow and forget knowing everything. That's never going to happen. But it's okay to not know things, and it's okay to be to not have everything there. You don't need the big thing. You need the small thing, which is the will to journey, to change, to love, to live, etc. So yeah, Neil, I see your hand. I think
I have a bit of a different starting point from all of this. Kind of building on what was said over here. The first reading and this third reading, in that I'm not looking at it as making a change, just moving forward, not being stagnant, and not giving up. Because that's the hard thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to give up. It's easy to stop. It's easy to break and not get unbroken. It's easy to just stop. The hard thing is getting going and moving towards repairing and replacing those torn edges from the first one. And then here, again, yeah, sometimes that first step is the hardest. And it is very easy to disregard it and not do anything.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So sometimes that first step is the hardest, and it actually feels like gigantic. Whereas once you do it, some of the other steps that might be bigger steps actually pale in comparison, because it's already you're on your way. So you sort of have a better sense of what to do, and you feel more sure into your step. But I love that idea of moving forward and reminding us, you know, it's really easy to be resentful or to be frustrated or to be angry at someone. It's really easy to be negativity. I find to be very easy. And it's really a crutch for a lot of us when we hang on to negativities. And it's really, and when we try to have the same relationship with somebody 20 years ago today, but it's really not realistic because we're in very different places, etc. There's so much that we can stay stuck in, as you say, and moving forward really often requires that small step that you and Vipka were honing in on in this reading. I love that. Thank you. Arlene, we haven't heard from you.
Was the word start
Mm.
and the word fear.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about fear keeps us from starting. That something has to be done. And all you have to do is start. That's the only task. And once you start, other steps follow. But the fear can keep you from starting.
I love that. And I love that you honed in on the word start here, which in my count is 7 times. And 7 is a very significant number for us Jews. I know that he's not Jewish, but 7 is significant in Las Vegas, and you don't have to be Jewish to be there. By putting into the poem start 7 times, there might well be a thought of, as you said, sometimes we just have to start, even though, you know, starting with the first step doesn't mean you know where the step is going to land. You know, that foot might be here or here or here or here. It may not be, you may not land quite as steady as you want, but sometimes you have to just take that step, and you have to have the faith that you'll have the insurance to find your balance and take the second step. So thank you. Yes, Phil, and then we're going to have to sort of wind this up soon, but I want to hear your tie-in of all 3.
I was just thinking, don't bite off more than you can chew. And
Mhm,
basically, you have to start small. You can't go over here before you're right here. And you may start and you may go 2 steps and take 3 backwards, but you still have to persevere.
So I love that, Phil. Thank you. Yeah. So sometimes we don't even realize that we actually can't take the big step that we want to take, that actually is not even reasonable or practicable. Sometimes we actually have to take it as a small step in order to move forward. So I love that reminder that we should just get that off of our blech, to take it off of our plate or off of our stove, because that's not a thing. And I love also that we have to realize can be a certain zagging and zigging to our work in growth and change. And sometimes moving forward doesn't mean that we'll never move sideward, or that in order to move forward a second time, we might have to take a step back before we take 3 steps forward, and not giving up. Yeah. So I love your idea of perseverance and honing in on that. I do want to get to Musaf before we do Havdalah tonight. So, but we are going to conclude. But Josh, you had wanted to wrap in all three readings, so I just wanted to hear what you wanted to offer us.
Yeah, so I kind of look at it as the first text is your starting point. The second text is telling you how to get to where you go after the starting point. And then the third text, the second text, the third text is how you get there, or how to start going there. And then the third text is where, kind of where your first step should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's, if you go 1, 3, 2, you sort of get the complete arc of not the whole thing, but the first chapter.
So the first one is knowing where you are. The second one lets you know where you can get to. And the second one tells you, now's the time to begin. Yeah, I love that. So thank you. Thank you all for a very powerful discussion of Teshuvah today. A lot of Torah to bring into the new year with us. I'm certainly going to try to reflect back on all the wisdom that you have all offered each other and me. And Yasher Koach Kol HaKavod in this. So we're going to have to get back to Musaf, though. We have a lot more to do. And we'll still try to time manage it.